4.5%. That is the obesity rate in Japan, a nation of 125 million people. We aren't talking about a remote village of monks. This is one of the most urbanized, high-stress, overworked societies on the planet. Meanwhile, in the United States, we've crossed 40%. Western Europe is trailing close behind at 30%. Japan has maintained that 4.5% baseline for decades, while the rest of the world is drowning in metabolic failure. And here is the fact the industry doesn't want you to think about. The average Japanese person lives to 84, the longest lifespan on Earth. They eat rice 3 times a day. They don't have a gym culture. They count 0 calories. Something is happening there that the mainstream nutrition complex is deliberately ignoring. Today, I am pulling back the curtain on exactly what that is. I'll be blunt. Your doctor has 12 minutes to see you and a prescription pad to fill. The medical machine gets paid for your visits, not for your permanent recovery. I am building an underground community of people who actually want the clinical truth. Subscribe to this channel right now and hit like before the algorithm suppresses this. We need to hit 100,000 subscribers to make this message unignorable. Do it now. I've been a practicing physician for 15 years. I see the same story every day. Patients with sluggish metabolisms and chronic fatigue who have tried every corporate diet in the book. They track every carb and eliminate every gram of fat. They lose 10 pounds in a month and gain 15 back in a year. That isn't a failure of willpower. It is a failure of the physiological blueprints they were given. Your body is smarter than any diet ever invented. When I stopped looking at Western guidelines and started looking at the clinical data on traditional Japanese biology, everything I thought I knew about metabolism was reorganized. Japanese people don't count calories. They don't drink overpriced protein shakes. They eat specific, functional foods that reprogram their bodies at a cellular level to burn fat instead of storing it. Every one of these tools is available to you right now. Let's start with the foundation that most nutritionists are too afraid to discuss. The establishment wants you to believe weight is a simple math problem, calories in versus calories out. It's clean logic that works perfectly on paper and fails miserably in practice. Why? Because that formula ignores the most important variable in the human machine, your gut microbiome. Inside your intestines lives a community of trillions of bacteria. You have more bacterial cells in your gut than you have human cells in your entire body. They don't just digest your food. They are the master controllers. They regulate your hunger hormones, dictate your systemic inflammation levels, and decide how fast you incinerate fat. They are literally sending signals to your brain, telling you when to eat and when to stop. Think of your gut as a factory. In a healthy factory, the workers, the good bacteria, process food efficiently and send a clear signal to the brain. We have enough. Stop the intake. But if you feed that factory decades of processed sugar, refined flour, and antibiotics, the good workers die off. They are replaced by opportunistic strains that do the exact opposite. They amplify your hunger, trigger chronic inflammation, and instruct your body to store visceral fat. Visceral fat is the real killer. It isn't the fat you can grab in the mirror. It's the fat wrapped around your internal organs, your liver, your heart, your intestines. It isn't passive storage. It is an active endocrine gland. It pumps out inflammatory molecules called cytokines. These cytokines drive insulin resistance, trigger the buildup of plaque in your arteries, and are directly linked to elevated cancer risks. Visceral fat kills quietly, and it accumulates the moment your microbiome factory loses its elite workers. Why are the Japanese protected? In 2018, a massive study of 132 countries found that the closer a nation's diet matched the traditional Japanese pattern, more fish, more soy, more seaweed, and less red meat or dairy, the lower their obesity rate fell. This had nothing to do with wealth, education, or genetics. We know this because when Japanese people move to the West and adopt our industrial diet, their obesity rates skyrocket to match ours within a single generation. It isn't their DNA, it's the blueprints on their plate. Let's dismantle the specific mechanisms one by one. The first weapon in the Japanese arsenal, and the one the Western fitness industry hates the most, is fermentation and microbiome restructuring. The most powerful tool here is natto. To a Western eye, natto looks like a disaster. It's stringy, it's sticky, and it has a pungent odor that makes most people run for the exit. That is a massive mistake. From a clinical perspective, natto is the single most potent natural tool for restructuring a broken gut microbiome that exists on this planet. It's created by fermenting soybeans with a specific bacterium called Bacillus subtilis. Here is the insider secret about your weight. It often comes down to the ratio between two families of bacteria, Bacteroidetes and Firmicutes. In people struggling with obesity, the Firmicutes are winning. They are the ones that amplify hunger and store fat. In lean individuals, the Bacteroidetes are the dominant force. Regular natto consumption literally forces a shift in that ratio toward the lean profile. You are eating a food that re-engineers your internal bacterial landscape. A study in the Journal of Molecular Nutrition and Food Research confirmed that this isn't just theory, it's dose dependent. The more natto you eat, the more your visceral fat shrinks. It tells your liver to stop synthesizing fatty acids and start breaking down fat. And listen to me, plain, unfermented soy doesn't do this. Raw soybeans are a locked safe full of valuables, but they contain trypsin inhibitors, molecular blockers that keep your body from accessing the nutrients. Fermentation is the key that opens the safe. It destroys the inhibitors and releases nattokinase, an enzyme that doesn't exist anywhere else in nature. Nattokinase reduces blood viscosity and slashes your risk of clots. That is why the Japanese eat it for breakfast, precisely when the cardiovascular risk window is at its peak. It isn't a tradition, it's a biochemically sound tactical strike. Clinical trials on obese laboratory models showed that 8 weeks of natto didn't just drop body weight, it normalized cholesterol and shut down the LXR receptors in the liver that regulate fat synthesis. This is measured, undeniable biological change. How do you use it? 50 grams a day. That is one standard package. Eat it for breakfast with a little soy sauce and mustard, exactly like the Japanese do. And for the love of your own health, do not heat it. High temperatures murder the bacteria. Bacillus subtilis is a survivor. It will get through your stomach acid and arrive in your intestine alive, making it more effective than 90% of the overpriced probiotic capsules you see on pharmacy shelves. If you can't find it fresh, buy it frozen. The bacteria wake right back up once they thaw. The second mechanism is the activation of your internal furnace using green tea catechins. There is a massive misconception here that I need to correct immediately. Most people think drinking a standard bag of green tea is enough. It isn't. Bagged tea and Japanese matcha are not in the same league. Matcha is a powder made from the entire leaf. You aren't just steeping it, you are consuming the whole biological matrix. One serving of matcha contains 137 times more EGCG than a standard cup of tea. EGCG is a plant antioxidant that does something no pharmaceutical drug can do without dangerous side effects. It activates your brown fat. You have two types of fat. White fat is the storage you want to burn. Brown fat is your internal furnace. It doesn't store energy. It burns it to generate heat through a process called thermogenesis. The more active your brown fat is, the more calories you incinerate while you're sitting on your couch. EGCG flips the molecular switch, a protein called UCP1 that ignites this furnace. Once it's on, your brown fat starts using your white fat as its primary fuel source. You are literally burning away your reserves from the inside out. Research at the University of Geneva proved that this combination of catechins and natural caffeine increased 24-hour energy expenditure by 4%. That might sound small, but over a year, that is hundreds of grams of fat burned with zero extra exercise. Here is the kicker the supplement industry doesn't want you to know. When you give caffeine without the catechins, the metabolic effect is zero. They must work in synergy. This is why matcha extract pills usually fail. They break the native matrix. To do this right, use 1 to 2 teaspoons of ceremonial grade matcha in water at exactly 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Boiling water is a death sentence for EGCG. It will destroy 60% of the medicine before it hits your lips. Add a slice of lemon. The ascorbic acid increases your absorption 6-fold. And no cow's milk. The protein in dairy binds to the catechins and blocks 80% of the benefit. Use a plant-based milk or drink it black 30 minutes before your main meal. That is when your brown fat activation is primed and ready to handle incoming calories. The third mechanism is the one the diet industry finds too boring to market: fiber and hunger suppression. It has no catchy name and no overnight visible result, which is exactly why it is the key to long-term weight control without the misery of a willpower battle. The traditional Japanese plate is loaded with seaweed, root vegetables, barley, and fermented greens. These aren't just healthy options. They are a dual-force delivery system of soluble and insoluble fiber that the modern Western diet has almost entirely deleted. In a massive study of over 4,000 patients, high fiber intake was directly linked to lower BMI and decreased systemic inflammation, regardless of how many total calories were eaten. Fiber doesn't just sit in your stomach. It changes the biological fate of the food you consume. It feeds your elite bacterial workers, and in response, they produce short-chain fatty acids, the most critical being butyrate. Butyrate isn't just a compound. It is a high-level signaling molecule. It does two things the medical industry would love to put in a pill. First, it fortifies your intestinal wall. A healthy lining is a tactical barrier. When it weakens, what the establishment dismissively calls leaky gut, toxins flood your circulation and trigger the chronic inflammation that drives visceral fat storage. Butyrate is the repair crew for that barrier. Second, it sends a direct satiety signal through the gut-brain axis. You stop feeling hungry not because you're being disciplined, but because your brain received the correct biochemical all clear. That is the difference between a diet and physiology. One is a daily fight. The other is an automated system. Now, let's talk about the specific biological tools and how you actually deploy them. Miso soup. 1 portion daily. But here is the catch. You must use unpasteurized miso paste. The industry loves pasteurization because it extends shelf life, but it also murders every single probiotic bacterium in the jar, turning a living medicine into dead food. Take 1 tablespoon of raw paste and dissolve it in warm, never boiling water. This gives you a simultaneous hit of probiotics, prebiotics, and essential amino acids. Seaweed. specifically wakame or kombu, 5 to 10 grams of dried seaweed a few times a week. Seaweed contains a unique pigment called fucoxanthin. You won't find this in any land-based plant. Fucoxanthin flips the same UCP1 switch I mentioned earlier, but it does it directly inside your white fat cells. It literally reprograms your fat storage depots to start behaving like fat-burning engines. Fatty fish, 3 servings a week, salmon, mackerel, or sardines. You're looking for a heavy dose of EPA and DHA omega-3 fatty acids. These don't just reduce inflammation, they actively support brown fat activity. But if you deep fry them in pro-inflammatory seed oils, you are sabotaging the entire mechanism. Grill them or bake them. Barley. Move away from pure white rice and start using mugi gohan, a mix of 70% rice and 30% barley. Barley is loaded with beta-glucan, a soluble fiber that is essentially high-octane fuel for your butyrate-producing bacteria. It is one of the cheapest, most effective metabolic hacks sitting on your grocery store shelf. In Japan, it isn't just about the what, it's about the how. The corporate nutrition complex wants you carrying a food scale and a calculator everywhere you go. They want you exhausted by the math so that you eventually give up and buy their prepackaged, low-calorie chemical garbage. The Japanese bypass all of that with a structural system called Ichiju Sansai, 1 soup and 3 side dishes, a bowl of miso, a clean protein like fish or natto, and 2 small vegetable sides. This isn't a diet plan, it's a habitual architecture that regulates your macronutrients for you. You don't need to count anything because the structure of the plate does the work. Then there is the principle of Hara Hachi Bu, eating until you are 80% full. The industry ignores the fact that your satiety signal is on a 20-minute delay. If you eat until you feel full, you have already overshot the target by 15% and triggered an insulin storage response. When you stop at 80%, your biology catches up 20 minutes later, and you feel perfectly satisfied without the metabolic heaviness. This one habit alone slashes your daily caloric intake without a single second of hunger. And finally, the timing. In most Japanese households, the kitchen closes by 7 or 8 p.m. They don't eat again until 7 a.m. That isn't a fasting protocol sold by a Silicon Valley guru. It's a cultural rhythm. But those 12 hours of quiet are exactly when your body switches to burning stored fat and your liver undergoes cellular repair. It's a free fat-burning window that the establishment never bothers to mention. Now let's talk about why most of you will fail if you don't listen to these 3 common mistakes. Mistake 1, inconsistency. You try natto for 3 days, decide you hate the smell, and quit because the scale didn't move. Listen to me. Your microbiome is a living ecosystem. You don't renovate a building in 48 hours. The clinical research shows it takes 4 to 8 weeks of a consistent signal to competitively displace the Firmicutes and shift your ratio. Japanese people don't eat these foods on a cycle. They eat them every day for 80 years. Mistake 2, boiling the medicine. If you pour boiling water over your matcha or your miso, you have just committed biological sabotage. You are murdering the EGCG and the probiotics before they ever hit your lips. 79 degrees Fahrenheit, no higher. Mistake 3, the supplement trap. I see patients all the time who buy nattokinase capsules or green tea extract pills because they want the convenience. They are getting a photocopy of 1 page instead of the whole book. Whole foods contain a native matrix of interacting compounds that amplify each other's effects. The extract is a lonely, weakened version of the real thing. The whole food always wins. Mistake 4. Measuring the wrong data. If you are only looking at the scale, you are being lied to. Visceral fat is dense, and as you lose it, you often gain lean tissue. The scale might stay the same while your waist drops 3 inches. Throw the scale away. Buy a measuring tape. Measure your waist at the navel on an empty stomach. For men, anything over 37 inches is a metabolic emergency. For women, the line is 31.5. That is your real indicator of survival. So, here is your tactical daily protocol. Morning. Start with a bowl of rice mixed with 30% barley, 50 grams of natto with mustard and soy sauce, a bowl of unpasteurized miso soup with seaweed. 30 minutes before, take your matcha, 79 degrees, with lemon, no dairy. Midday. Your normal lunch, but ensure you have a clean protein and a side of naturally fermented vegetables. Hit your fatty fish 3 times a week. Evening. Finish dinner before 8 p.m. Follow the Ichiju Sansai structure. After that, the window is closed until morning. This isn't Japanese cuisine. It's a physiological uprising. There is no biological difference between a Japanese stomach and yours. The fundamental machinery is identical. The only difference is the instructions you are feeding it. I'm asking you one last time. How old are you? Put it in the comments. The way your body handles visceral fat changes massively after 45 when your hormonal protection fades. I need to know who I'm talking to so I can keep giving you the data to bypass the system. You won't hear this at your next 12-minute appointment. There is no billing code for fixing a metabolism with fermented beans and seaweed, and there is no profit margin for the pharmacy in a bowl of barley. The system is rigged to manage your symptoms, not resolve your condition. I am Dr. Elias Thorne, and I built this channel to give you the truth that the establishment is too afraid to say. Subscribe, like the video, and help us reach 100,000. Let's tear down the managed decline together. Get to work.